This video is going to show you a Solo Master Nightfall getting the Platinum rank and the 100k Pinnacle score. First, I just want to see the run and skip the timestamps you have available to you. Other than that, I can show you my setup, my mods, and my weapons and stuff like that. So first of all, the modifiers for the Nightfall are pretty simple. Hot Knife, Shanks have Solar Shields, Champions Overload, Barrier, Chaff, Radar is disabled, Equipment Locked, Match Game, Champions Mob, and Incoming Arc and Splash Damage is increased. The key points on all that is incoming arcs increased, right? That's important to know. Match game, because there's all three shields to deal with, and a lot of those, so that's important to know. Champions Overload Barrier, we need to spec to those. Other than that, there's nothing really special about this Nightfall. It's not too bad. So the setup is going to be an elemental well setup on a bottom tree gunslinger. So we're using way of the Sharpshooter. That's bottom tree. That enables our golden gun to precision hit. Swarm grenade, any nade that's good to you. You could use trip mine if you wish. I just use swarm because of the tracking on it. Marksman's Dodge, so we can reload our weapons when we dodge. Don't really want Gambler's Dodge for this, really. We paired that with the exotic helmet, of course, Celestial Nighthawk, which gives our golden gun a high damage shot, but it converts it to one shot, of course. It's the classic setup. Armor mods, so this is where we get our elemental well setup. So we use elemental light. So defeating a combatant with your super spawns an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type. So we'll get a well when we kill a champion or whatever you might be using it on with your super. So we'll get that. Shieldcrash Wellmaker. So when we break a shield, we get a well. Now this works really well, but I could have exchanged this for Font of Might, and I probably would have done that. If I've redone this run over, I probably would have run Font of Might, which gives us a weapon damage buff when we pick a well up, but I didn't have that on. But if you want to put that on this setup, you could definitely do that. We have Font of Wisdom, which gives increased super regen when we pick up a well for 30 seconds. I believe it just maxes your intellect out at 100%. And then we have Elemental Armaments. This is very key you have this on. Weapon takedowns with a damage type that matches your subclass element have an escalating chance to spawn an elemental well. Other mods to just mention: Particle Deconstruction, the obvious sort of setup. Double arc damage resistance to match the Nightfall. Overload Bow and a Barrier Auto Rifle. Ammo Finders on the helmet. Scavengers on the boots. And that's it. But as I said, you can put Font of Might on for instead of the Shieldcrash Wellmaker. I just wanted to put this on to test it because this Nightfall has tons and tons of shields. So the weapons: Overload Bow in our kinetic slot, which is explosive payload. We're using the exotic auto rifle HARDLIGHT. Now this is the key to the setup. This weapon links really good with elemental wells. Okay? Because you can switch burns, void, solar arc, and there's a lot of void solar arc in this. And then lastly, Threaded Needle with Vorpal Weapon, boss spec in it to get increased damage on vehicles and bosses. Because Sepix Prime is classed as a vehicle and there's a ton of vehicles in this. That's the setup I was using. So pretty straightforward with the starting section. You want to Sparrow your way to the end of the map. Depending on your power level, depends on your success rate of getting to the end, to this section here. Like if you're below 1340, your Sparrow will have less health and may likely explode on you. So if you're lower in power, then just run to the back of the map if you wish. But you really don't need to deal with all those adds, the hive and stuff. It's just a time waste at this point. You don't need it for 100k, you don't need it for platinum. The only thing that you may need is the champion I just took out right there. However, I've been told that if you don't kill this champion, you still get platinum rank. I'm not going to spend time testing that, so I'm just going to take him out. You can see you can take that champion out in 10-20 seconds, so it doesn't really matter. But if you want to skip that champion, I think you can, but I don't know for certain if you can. So with this section here, you're going to have your first barrier champion to deal with, a bunch of Thrall, a couple of Fallen, but what I'm trying to do here is get an elemental well going. So HARDLIGHT synergizes with elemental wells because of this. Because if you're solo, chances are you can't match your subclass to the energy weapon that you have, because you need to cover more shields than what a fire team would. This is where HARDLIGHT is really good because, I mean, it won't cover stasis, but there's other stasis setups for that. But say I have to be on a Night Stalker, but my weapons need to cover arc and solar, then if I put HARDLIGHT on, then I can switch the burn to HARDLIGHT to my subclass and start getting elemental wells. And it's good on barriers, and it's pretty good because it staggers enemies. It's sort of like a high caliber rounds effect. I don't know if it's got, I can't mind if it's got high caliber rounds, but it sort of staggers the enemies like high cal, which is very good in PvE because enemies can't shoot you. You see that HARDLIGHT, he just keeps getting stunned over and over. I think it's more the HARDLIGHT rounds of HARDLIGHT that's doing that actually. It's not high cal, but it has a similar effect to that. So that's what makes it so good with certain setups. It may struggle on GM, but the thing is, if you are in a Nightfall where you want to use Threaded Needle's almost to the power level of Sleeper Simulant, so it's kind of an exotic in its own right, especially when you pair it with Particle Deconstruction. So when you're using a double primary loadout, Threaded Needle's really good. It's sort of, you know, it's doing similar damage to Sleeper. I'm not sure if it's doing as much, but it's got more ammo capacity, things like that. So it's gonna be a go-to heavy. So will Reed's Regret, the Stasis heavy linear. Tarantula, really good with box breathing. The Solar Corsair's Wrath isn't as good. It's got high impact reserves on it. That's the best PvE damage perk you can get on it. It's probably the weakest heavy linear we've got legendary wise. Okay, it really is not as good as the others, but if there's a time when we need to use a solar heavy linear, then that will be the one, or Sleeper if we've got the room for an exotic slot. So you see I've got my super. I've been using obviously the elemental wells, which you can see to the left hand side, improved ability regen for 30 seconds. We're going to damage that champion you just saw there for a bit amount, maybe 5 or 10% off, then use your super. That will then outright kill a champion if you're at power. The lower power level you are, the less damage your golden gun's going to do. But I'm going to assume that you're in your 1340s or 1350, and if you are, then this setup's going to work, you know, really good with the golden gun wise. If you're really low power and you still want to solo it, then you really shouldn't be watching this video so much, and you want to be looking at a Night Stalker run at that point. This is more of a run when you're at power, when you can sort of deal with adds easy. But when you're underpowered, you want to play something more safe, maybe Stasis, or maybe the Night Stalker Graviton build, or Coyote, 6 Coyote, or even Omni, Oculus if you like that. Just depends what you prefer. But I will tell you, Graviton Forfeit is the best invisibility exotic in the game. It just is. But I haven't made a video about it, as I'll save that for something else that I'm going to do with it on a hunter. So with this encounter, pretty much easy to deal with. I just take it from the bridge. Be careful of the 2 snipers, the Vandal snipers at the back, because arc damage is increased. They can do, you know, a lot of damage to you. You can put sniper damage resistance on the chest plate, but you really don't need to do that because they're doing arc. The double arc resistance is going to protect against that anyway, so you don't need to go sniper resistance. Not on mass difficulty. Maybe on GM it might be a way to go on sniper resistance and then 1 arc, but I would still say probably double arc resistance is the way. Or arc resistance concussive dampener, because splash damage is increased. So there's a couple of enemies in this, especially knights, the brigs, they do splash damage. Certain attacks do splash damage, certain ones don't. What I would consider an attack that splash damage against you is something that hits a wall or a floor, and when it hits, it has an impact damage and it sort of shatters around you. Right? That's what I would call splash damage. Or if a tank does his attack on you, the arc attack or the solar attack, and that hits the floor close to you, that'll do damage to you near you. That's what I consider splash damage. So for round 1, this is the 3 waves of the section where you've got to, you know, just kill adds to proceed. On wave 1, I like to stand here. You're safe enough here to do it. But on wave 2 and 3, I'm going to switch my positioning. I just do it from here so that the Fallen group up nicely. Because on wave 1, essentially you're only dealing with Fallen. So you have tons of cover here. And the Fallen aren't fighting Hive. Now if the Fallen are fighting Hive, they're going to be sort of confused on whether to deal with you or the Hive, which makes them annoying to deal with, as the adds will run away out of your sight and things like that. So, but on wave 1, I would advise standing up top, right? But you could stand to the right side as well, which I'm going to show you where that is. I'm sure you're going to know. If you're watching solo runs, you're going to know exactly where I'm standing. But if you don't, then I'm going to explain where that is in a minute. But on wave 1, you'll have a bunch of dregs still alive if you stood up top, because they won't push. Once you take out the majority of those, you will get sort of an extra wave of adds on phase 1. It'll be 3 dregs with solar, a damage against you. You've got to be careful of those. Don't get too close to them. Then when you take those out, you'll get some solar shanks. This is still considered as phase 1, by the way. Just be careful that you're in the right position, because the shanks could melt you down pretty quick. I believe they do arc, so the shanks can be dangerous in packs, but they're easy to take. So I use the elemental shield break. So when you get a shield break, you also get a well, which you'll see that happen a lot. As I said, I could have put Font of Might on to get the weapon damage buff instead. But as I said, it doesn't really matter at this power. I guess that would be better, the lower your power level, just to bump your damage up so that you're doing a bit more than what you should be, because you will lose power level if you're 1341 or less. Well, you will, no matter how many power level, but it scales down. I'm not going to go into exactly how that scales right now because I'm doing it solo. Now we're on to phase 2. You get 2 solar wizards. You want to try and take those as soon as you can, but be ready for the anti-barrier champion to spawn. There's going to be an anti-barrier champion spawn. It's time based, this. After so many seconds you'll get the barrier. So what I'll do is pop a super right away. I could have damaged the knight first and then killed him with my super. I would get a third of my super back. It didn't plan out that way, but that's fine. With this setup, basically there's a perk that's called Practice Makes Perfect, and you'll see that proc at the left hand side of the screen, ×4. It stacks to ×5. Okay, this perk has always been like this, which makes it really good. So you can essentially farm super energy off high health targets. It makes it good for GMs, but it also makes it kind of bad because the golden gun doesn't do enough damage when you're underpowered, which I believe they should sort of buff it so it sort of does a bit more damage, and kind of balance it around GM play, because I know we don't really want to do that, but GMs are all rage, so they may as well, because that's the strongest part of the game right now. That's what everyone's waiting for. That's what most people want to play. Either, you know, so they may as well just start balancing things around Grandmasters. So let's get Golden Gun a bit better in GMs, because it's good enough in Masters. Obviously, it's more than good enough, but it seems to scale. The power of it seems to scale down harshly the lower your power, which is why you're seeing Nightstalker runs, you're seeing Stasis runs overpower the rest of the other classes. Arcstride is good in its own right, but again, that's another class that's sort of going to underperform, and it still, even after its buffs, it's still going to underperform in GMs, because it's sort of, as I said, it's a melee based class. There's some discipline builds you can do on it, but it's still going to be underperforming compared to Nightstalker with the infinite invis and stasis. So that's what I would like to see with the Gunslinger. Obviously there's a champion mod, Wither and Heat. I could have used that, but particle deconstruction is still valued more. If you're using a linear, you still want to use the particle deconstruction. You can't use both, is what I'm saying here. The Wither and Heat is a class mod, particle deconstruction is a class mod, and they're both above 6 energy. Okay, so you can't use them both. You have to make a decision. If I was using a rocket launcher, maybe okay, let's put on Wither and Heat. Then you're going to get some, you know, benefit out of that, but I'm not. It lends itself, this Nightfall, to be using precision based weapons, because there's a lot of targets that require precision damage, right? The boss, the tanks, champions. So it just lends itself to use a linear in the end. It is still going to just be the best choice. So now we're still on this final section. Same thing again, we get shanks at the end of the phase 2, like we did on phase 1. If you do finish an exploder shank, they won't explode on you, so that's a good thing. If they're getting too close, don't kill a shank too close to you, because you're going to take impact damage, of course. Pick up any heavy as well to start on your phase 3. And this is where you're going to get 2 Overlord Champions, a bunch of Arc Knights, and a lot of snipers. Now, standing here where I am is the best place for, like I say, for phase 2 and phase 3. because a lot of the ads can't hit you so much. I mean, they can fire nades, stuff like that, but generally they can't hit you. What I would suggest with this is try and take out most of the ads before you deal with an overload, if you're not very confident. Because the ads can sort of get in the way of the champion. You might miss a shot or something, and the champion might not be stunned correctly, and then you might miss, you know, what you need to do. I decided to do a super there just to get rid of him. It's also going to showcase the setup quite well. There's an elemental well there to pick up, which I'm really wanting to sort of get to. I'm just taking out these ads first. As you can see, I've only really just used my golden gun super, and we're halfway already. The elemental well disappeared, so I didn't get that in time. If I'd got that in time, you're looking at me nearly getting my super almost within 30 seconds or 40 seconds, which is really good in, you know, in high-end content. I know it's not GM level, but it's still the next level. It's still the next best thing, right? Getting your super that quickly is very, you know, it's very good. So now we're just cleaning up. This phase is basically done. Taking out the remaining snipers. Just be careful to your right. When you start to push up, you'll notice that ads will start to push you. Now on GM level, I'm troll there. I'll play different. On Grandmaster, I play completely different to what I do on this. Because as you can see, you take a lot of reduced damage compared to you do on that level. If that was that same scenario right there, even though it doesn't even look like a mistake, if it was on Grandmaster difficulty, I'll be in trouble. I'll be on the red, or if not, maybe dead. But what you can do is when you're watching Masters is learn all the spawns. Because the spawns are the exact same on GM to Masters. They always have been. The champion locations, they're exact same. Obviously, the major difference is that the sandbox of it. The fact that you're going to get a hit a lot harder as you're 25 power levels under. So that's the challenge of the GM. It's not to sort of that would make them too difficult for folks if they actually even buff the ad density even further and you're underpowered. That would make them truly, you know, the next sort of thing, which I don't think they're going to do that. Which at that point maybe would be too much. You know, it's only meant to be Nightfall. It's not meant to be a raid. It's meant to be a Nightfall. But the identity of Nightfalls is changing over time. We're coming to the, you know, I still, as I say, prefer the old sort of system of Nightfalls should be like a 20-30 minute activity, not an hour. You know, some Nightfalls are like that, where it takes you an hour to solve them, certain ones. Obviously, Glassware is going to be one. Hallowed Lair, I believe, is going to be over 1 hour one, definitely on the GM difficulty. If you're getting Platinum and all that stuff. Corrupted, that's going to be a long one. But people enjoy to watch them, so I guess that's just where the direction we're heading in with it. We have our super, so we're going to use it on this barrier here. We're just going to weaken the barrier slightly. As I say, you just need to weaken them just a little bit. I didn't weaken him enough, so I didn't get my super back. Like I didn't get I didn't get a third super back because you procs off a kill, not usage. That just makes that bit a lot easier because obviously the barrier is going to shield all those ads, making it to the point where you're forced to take the barrier out. Especially on the higher difficulties, you'd be forced to sort of take the barrier out before the ads. Now we'll deal with the ads to our left, just because they sort of spam nades at you while you're fighting the tank and stuff, so just get rid of those. We'll find a bit of super while doing so. But we don't really need our super just yet. There's multiple sort of ways you could use your super and be efficient on this encounter. I wasn't as efficient as I probably should have been, but this was my sort of first time using this setup with the elemental wells properly. I mean, I've used elemental wells, but not to the degree of Warmind cells or Charge with Light mods. So I'm still sort of new to the elemental wells myself. So now we spawn in the tank and the two brigs. Now how I like to do this is take out the left side brig first. Because on left side, if you just look at that angle that I've got right there, you can see the tank's legs, but the tank can't see us. So the tank is eliminated from being a threat. He's no threat at all to us here, which this is the absolute best place to stand if you don't want to take much damage from enemies. So then all you've really got in terms of danger is the brig, which if the brig releases that gun that he just done where he does the void attack, you've got to watch out for that attack, because that's buffed by the splash damage increased. So you can get really hit hard from that, so just be careful. The arc attack is dangerous as well because it's buffed by the arc, but not as dangerous as the void blast. This brig was getting a little too close to me. There is a bit of randomness to them. They can sort of push up or not push you. I haven't figured out the AI path of these enemies. But generally, as I said, if they do get too close to you, don't let them get too close because they may stomp. So I ended up backing off at this point a little bit, which you can on left side. There's still sort of all this area right here. Don't use your linear on these because it will be a waste of ammo. Because of how the linears work, the legendary ones, their precision multiplier is really good, high damage, but their body shot damage is poor, like very poor. It's not like Sleeper. Sleeper has obviously really good precision hit damage, but it has really good body shot damage as well. So if you're using a Sleeper type run, you could body shot those and get, you know, nice damage. But with the legendaries, you don't want to do that. Just use your explosive payload bow. That'll be the best thing to you. Or if you're going to use HARDLIGHT, like I am, then use HARDLIGHT on them. But it's going to take a while taking those. Also, you notice I took out the Overload. Eventually, the Overload will spawn to the left side. So that's what I was waiting on as well. And that will eventually happen anyways, because by the time you took out the brig, the Overload slowly makes his way over. And that happens every time. Every time I've done this run, that happens. Not like on the other characters and stuff. Now we'll do some damage to the tank. Because of our build and things, heavy ammo isn't so important. And because we've got HARDLIGHT on, Freddy Needle doesn't need to be dealing with void shields, which I almost barely use it on void shields. Whereas if I was using a run, if I was using a setup where that's my only void source of damage, then you're going to see that you're going to lose more ammo where you could be using that ammo on the tank or the boss or, you know, what have you, or champions where it really matters, rather than having to deal with void shields, because there's void shields coming up at the boss fight. Like, there's quite a lot. There's 8 servitors in total. So now we'll deal with the right side brig. I've left the tank for now because we're just sort of we've done a bit of damage to him, and then now we can deal with the brig. But anytime you want to do damage to the tank, I like to just do it on the top of that building that you see me go to. It's a pretty good vantage point from there. You can't get hit so much from the tank. The only thing you really need to watch out for is the skiffs. They come every now and then, which they are linked to the tank's HP, so there'll be more ads spawning depending on how much damage you do to the tank. But even when the tank's taken out, there's still skiffs randomly come, which I actually checked on this run, and they actually just randomly fly over with no ads. Which that's a big thing to know about, that skiffs still come, because on GM they can kill you. On this difficulty maybe not, you know, obviously again it depends on power level. But I think for the most part people are getting, you know, very close to the 1350s now. As you know, the season's been out, you know, a month or so, so people have had the time to sort of level up. If you're serious enough about PvE, you will be doing that. But again, it comes down to time management, how much time you've got. There's people got more time than others, so I understand that. We've got another super to use, so we'll just use it on the tank. It's free damage, so we may as well. Snipers did hit me there, which was interesting. They generally don't, so that's something worth noting to be careful of. When the tank reveals his crit spot, it's a higher, I believe it's a higher precision multiplier, so you can do more damage to the central part of the tank than the legs. So whenever the tank's revealed, try and do as much damage as you can when that center part opens up. So this is a good location for the next sort of overload that you're going to deal with. That's in middle. Now this overload here, generally I take him from left side, things like that, but if you take him from left, that means Adds are going to nade you because you're within their aggro zone, if you like. You're close to them enough for them to be aggroed by you, which means they're going to fire nades at you, shoot their arc stuff. And even just like 3 or 4 dregs, that can be dangerous because of the modifiers. So if you deal with him from here, you'll find that the Overlord less likely to teleport about. So you can deal with them very easily. This run itself in particular isn't really quick, but it's a foolproof run, I would say, because you've got all shields available to you to break, because you've got HARDLIGHT. You've got all the DBS in the world with Fairy Needle, and you've got your super to assist with that. It works exceptionally at the boss as well, because basically the boss itself isn't classed as a boss. Well, it is, but it's classed as a vehicle. But boss spec does work, of course, because boss spec involves vehicle and bosses. So as you saw, I got a shield break there from quite a good bit of distance. That could be 30-40 meters. So that's really good in terms of what HARDLIGHT can do for shield breaks. I'm interested to see what it'll be like for GM level. Will it be able to break shields from that distance? Probably. It'll be just a little bit more difficult because obviously auto rifles are sustained weapons, so you can't really peek shoot with them so much. Not like a bow. That's what makes bows so good, which in my opinion bows are still the best primary in the game. Especially if Overload bow is up, then it makes Overloads a cinch to deal with. Especially with an explosive payload one. And they're really good on adds, especially on GM level, because you can one-shot a couple of adds, 1 or 2 shots, you know, just peek, fire, shoot. Whereas with weapons like auto rifles and things like that, you've got to sustain fire them, which means you're taking damage while you're dealing damage to them. Whereas with a bow, you can consistently strafe behind cover and not have to deal with adds. And you can take them from a range as well. Scouts and hand cannons, obviously they're very good right now, but there's no mods up, which baffles me why they've done that. Why did they buff scouts and hand cannons and then say, alright, we've buffed scouts and hand cannons, but we're going to give you auto rifle? I don't really understand why they've done that. Maybe it's because they're going to, when they, next season will be probably that, and they'll have rocket launcher mods, scout and hand cannon. That's what I think they're wanting to do. Because in D1, they're wanting to make it feel more of a D1 feel in terms of sandbox for PvE. They're wanting scouts and hand cannons because they were the best 2 primaries. For PvE, you always ran a scout with explosive or maybe hung jury, and then obviously things like Fatebringer or any sort of hand cannons. So they want that feel in D. Obviously D2's a different game than D1, but they want a sort of PvE sandbox feel of D1 but in D2, because they're not, it's obvious, it's plainly obvious because they're bringing Galahorn back. So you know, probably it's going to be Galahorn, a good hand cannon or a scout, and then you know, whatever it might be, a sniper maybe, fusion, it depends what other mods there is at the time. So I'll deal with the final overload. I'm farming super here, as you can see, because we do want to start the boss fight with a super, because that's the whole strategy to this, is that you don't really need to use much heavy on the boss. The subclass itself deals with all the damage. Be sure to leave this area with as much ammo picked up as possible, just in case you do need to sort of use heavy. Say you miss a super, which can be done, and that way you've got backup damage if that does happen. So obviously before the boss fight starts, there'll be 2 overloads. Your main key here is to sort of deal with all the dregs first. I believe it's like 6-7 dregs. So if you can do that, then try to do that, because you'll get naded and stuff like that. But if you do start dealing with the champions first, try to isolate one to the left hand side. See where I'm standing. It's very subtle, but if I stand here rather than central, I can easily outstrafe the champion's shots, right? Making it really easy and simple to deal with them, rather than making it more difficult where you've got 3 dregs firing at you, a nade on the floor, and the champion's firing at you. That's where you get your wipes, and then you'll blame the overload for your death, but sometimes it isn't the overload's fault. Sometimes it's maybe because your positioning wasn't quite right with them. Okay, this is where we're going to pop a super. Make sure you get your crit. Take that extra second or 2 to do that. make sure you do this. You need to make a decision. Either super straight away, get your crit, or let the the boss teleport, because he will teleport 5 seconds after. He's on about 5 seconds after the shield goes down. So what I'm trying to say is, you could pop your super too late, and you might miss your shot because the boss has teleported. So if you want to wait for teleport, then go for your golden gun shot. Just know, if you're going to do that, do DPS from downstairs, which you're going to see me do DPS from downstairs, and that's the key to this fight. Is with golden gun, obviously you can get flinched in your super, which is that's another dumb thing with this. They should really do that. Just take the flinch away from golden gun. Like, you shouldn't take any flinch damage, in my opinion, because I think that'll be another way of buffing it, sort of thing. I know it's like a high skill thing, but it puts people off from using it. That's why you don't see it getting a lot of use. But remove its flinch. Why has it got flinch? It's a super. It should be very powerful that way, where you don't take any flinch. But that does the first phase of damage, as you saw. So it's done enough damage to get the boss to shield and have all the servitors up. Now on this particular phase there's no champions, so you could technically just sort of ignore all the ads in middle, because we're going to do DPS from down below, and just take the servitors. If you do it like this though, you are going to be sort of overrun on phase 3. On GM I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend taking out 3 servitors, not 4. That's key, because you don't want to start DPS until you're ready. Because if you take down that 4th servitor, there'll be more skips coming in with more fallen, right? Then you've just done something that's not in your control. Like, you're not in control of it, because then there's more ads in middle, then they're just grouping up on you, and then there's a higher chance of dying. You always want to look at something objectively. What's the chances of me dying right now? And I don't mean that in a nerdy way or something like that. I mean it in an objective way. What's the chances of me dying right now? Right, well, there's like 20 falling in front of me. There's captains, there's nades at the door. Obviously in that left hand side where all the cover is. What's the chances? Well, there's actually quite a high chance I might die here. Right? And that escalates on GM difficulty, because there's things that can just sort of wipe you out. So you sort of done DPS from down below. Just bear in mind, when you go down below, this is where you're going to get ads chasing you at times. So like there was a dreg there, a solar dreg, and then a exploding shank. You can see all the ads spawning in, so you can see that's happening. But we haven't done enough damage yet to get him to his last phase. So what I'm wanting to do here is sort of clear out the ads that group up down below, and then we'll use a couple of linear shots. This will also build up towards our final circle that we'll use for phase 3. So we're not so much time wasting here, so to speak. But we're just going to stand right here and then do as much damage as we can to get into his 3rd phase. Perfect. Now we can deal with the final phase, which is the toughest of the 3, because there's just a lot of ads. The solar shanks, which I haven't mentioned, but I've already done this run twice, and I've done commentary on both runs, so I do repeat myself at times. But that's just the nature of it. Shanks spawn up on a timer. So even when all ads are down, you're not safe. You're still going to get the shanks, and I think it's like 1 or 2 minutes that they just keep spawning up and up. So that's an independent spawn, but the rest of the ads are obviously linked to the phase you're on. So we've got a lot of orange bars. This is where you see a lot of your orange bars. A couple of fallen captains, some melee based, some ranged based. The ranged captains are the threat on this. And a lot of the vandals and things like that, because their tracking shots can go through the window. It makes them annoying at times to deal with. But this is the safest part of the map, so you've got to really sort of learn this from this section. But what I can tell you how to start this this 3rd phase off good is take out 3 of the servitors, because they're doing splash damage to you as well at that central door. Some of them can sort of hit you around the corner. Take the 3 that can see you, but the very left hand side void servitor can't. So that's a good start. Another good start is don't deal with the champions until majority of the vandals and the dregs are down. Okay, because they're just sort of in your way. So that's another thing that you can do. You can also use a golden gun on a captain. I don't believe I did. I can't mind if I did on this run, but it's probably best that if you're going to rush it, that's fine. Take them with the golden gun, but just make sure you get your critical hit then at that point. But if you want to take it slower, as I said, take all the adds first, and then you can deal with one of the overloads. One of the overloads you'll always see, another overload you won't. Another overload will be to the corridor to my left. But the overload, the final overload, will sort of hide from you as much as possible. This one won't. Now this is a good opportunity to do DBS, which I did. I'm still getting hit quite a lot there though, you notice. We took him out with linear. I could have used golden gun there if I wanted, and then farmed up another circle, which is very easy to do. But I didn't opt to do that at that point. So now that's it. Most of the adds are down, but there is some adds in the corridor, and this is where I'm going to use HARDLIGHT. I didn't think of doing this, but because HARDLIGHT has bounce and ricochet shots, you can deal damage to those adds in the left corridor, because it bounces off the walls and things like that, which makes it really good for this bit. I didn't think of that at the time, because I don't really use HARDLIGHT much. There's some arc shields in there as well, so I end up switching to arc, which I end up seeing there. But this is the dynamic here, so you're getting hit in the corridor when you push, which you kind of have to sort of push a little bit, but you're also getting hit by that captain over the other side. And then when you go to see where the captain is, he hides. So it can be annoying, this bit, for that. I imagine this would be one of the most annoying parts when you're doing the Grandmaster solo, which I have done on all 3 classes with various subclasses. I always remember this bit being a little bit annoying just because the captains, they just hide all the time. But here you can see I get a good angle on this captain. And I can use the ricochet shots. And that deals with that our captain, because taking out the captains means that we can actually get a stun. Because you can see that captains continually, the last overload that we need to take is hiding behind the adds. If you do get a good shot on the captain, you take his shield down, melt him down with a linear if you can. It's just going to make things a little bit easier for you. It's just whether you get the shield break before he teleports. So you can see the independent shank phase starting as well, so we're getting solo shanks coming back. I'm going to take out another servitor. But we're not ready for damage because we haven't took out the overload. Whatever you do, don't start the next phase until you kill that overload. Because what you're going to end up doing there is, if you do take all 4 servitors and there's still an overload to take, you're going to have to fight all the 3rd wave of adds just to get that overload, because the overload will hide behind the adds. So don't do that. Make sure on this phase 2 you take out all the adds you need to, or most of them, and then you can deal with your overload. We're going to deal with the overload in the corridor, because that's where he's hiding at this minute, and you can tell by the solo damage he does. Just taking out the remainder of the shanks. Pretty much good in that. We're just waiting to sort of take out the overload. This is where we're going to use the linear just as much as possible. Take him on the last shot. We missed a 1 shot or 2 just because of aim assist. When invisible marauders and things like that run past your camera, your linear will just automatically seek them. It's just part of what aim assist is. People say aim assist, you know, oh, console players are lucky to have it and stuff. And at times maybe so, but at other times it's a really hindrance. Especially when you're dealing with multiple adds on the screen, it can just get in the way. Okay, so this is now the final phase. We're doing 2 linear shots before he teleports. We're going to come down below, use a golden gun. Just make sure the boss is there though. Don't pop your golden gun until you see the boss. And then get your critical hit. And then he's pretty much, you know, dead at that point. But that was the solo master run on it, on a hunter with this build. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.